天空のガルータを私たちで救うの。さよなら、ロデア。
The Wii U is one of the best-selling consoles of all time, so it shouldn't come as any surprise that as a result it received a lot of new game releases long after its successor, the Wii U, came out, especially if you know anything about how the Wii U did. A lot of those games, and I mean a lot of them, were Just Dance and Let's Sing games, the most recent of which came out in like 2019, which is really late. But the game I'm here to talk about today is an even weirder one. Rodea the Sky Soldier came out in 2015, 3 years after the Wii U had hit the market with a wet thud and only a year and a half before the Switch came out. So, what happened? The story starts with Yuji Naka, who you may know as one of the OG Sonic developers, the creator of Nights into Dreams, or the creator of Balan Wonderworld and convicted inside trader. After he left Sega back in 2006, Naka started his own game studio, Prope. Or Prope. I'm not 100% sure how it's pronounced. I'm going to say Prope for the rest of the video, and you're just going to have to bear with me on that one. Prope cut their teeth making a few smaller games at first. Ivy the Kiwi for the Wii and the DS eShop, and the Windows Phone? Remember the Windows Phone? That was a brief period of time. And Let's Tap for the Wii, a game that I've never actually played but has been on my to-stream list for quite a while. Its whole gimmick was that it came bundled with a box that you used to play the game. It's weird, I want to play it. Anyway, back to the story. Probe made a few of these smaller scale games either while working on or in preparation of a bigger project. It's not 100% clear, there's not really a lot of like documented kind of timeline stuff for this, but that game was called Rodea. Rodea's development seemingly went pretty smoothly. They wrapped up development in 2011. Pretty late for a Wii game, the console sales were starting to wind down a bit, new consoles were just round the corner, but I mean, there were still plenty of games coming out for the Wii at that time. They signed a deal with Kadokawa Games, which included giving Kadokawa the rights to develop their own 3DS port of the game. The intention being they would release the Wii version and 3DS version simultaneously, and you'd have a portable version of the same game. According to a Polygon interview with Naka in 2012, the Wii version had been finished for a year and they'd submitted it to their publisher with no release date being set. Naka himself speculated that this was because of a 3DS port not being completed yet. On a side note, this interview also says some stuff about how the game wouldn't work well on the Wii U because it was being developed with a pointer in mind on the Wii, and well, if you know where the story's going, then that's a hefty amount of foreshadowing. Eventually, Kadokawa announced they were also working on a version of the game for the new released Wii U console. Presumably, and honestly probably correctly, assuming that a Wii release this late in the Wii's life cycle would be pretty dead on arrival. But this however delayed the game even further into 2015, where it finally released to the public. Even the release was a bizarre situation. The 3DS and Wii U versions of the game released simultaneously, and rather than cancel the Wii version or release it normally, because again this is 3 years after the Wii U's release date, long after people had stopped buying games for the Wii that weren't Just Dance, they included a copy of the Wii version of the game in the first print run of the Wii U version as a bonus disc. I'm not sure if this game ever actually sold enough copies to get multiple print runs. It's relatively safe to assume that any version of the game you find probably has or had the Wii version bundled in, so if you're buying it secondhand, double check the disc is there. If you manage to find a sealed copy, which is not that hard, I found a sealed copy of this less than 2 years ago, they're still going around for pretty cheap. You could probably assume it's got the Wii disc in it. Maybe double check, but yeah. So how did it turn out? Well, the original Wii game is actually really good. Rodea is a 3D action platformer where you use the Wii's pointer to grab onto things and then whip the main character, the titular Rodea, through the air in arcs based around how you swing the remote. You fly through the air after launching yourself this way, and you can grab additional things to keep your momentum going, and you end up flying through levels in a really fun and satisfying way. It's a very fluid and momentum heavy kind of feeling game where it's just fun to fly around. It's one of those games where the core movement is just a very fun feeling thing, and then they built a game around it, which is some of my favourite types of games. There's also a few upgrades you find in levels, one of which upgrades Rodea into a more powerful form that buffs his speed and his attack. He actually has 3 kind of levels of this, like you get the power up and it takes you into the ascended level, but you also have a level below your default where you're weaker and you can't fly as fast, and you can't even attack. It kind of reminds me of in Nights into Dreams, where you lose the flying ability, and then you collect these upgrades to go back up into the regular forms again. It also kind of works as a health system. If you get damaged while you're in that weakened state, you die, and that is the only way that you can die. Other upgrades include a gun, which you use for shooting enemies and obstacles. In particular, there's a lot of like spiked objects and things like that you wouldn't want to attack with melee attacks, or other things that you can only attack from a distance, and so on. There's slide boots that let you interact with these kind of slide panels, so you can kind of platform in different ways. And then there's an extra kind of lock-on attack that lets you attack more things at once. Oh shit. You get each of these abilities by picking up the corresponding item pickup in the level, and you lose it if you pick up one of the other ones. You can only have one of these upgrades at a time. They're all pretty simple, but they're used to add quite a bit of variety to the levels, and honestly they're quite well done. My only real complaint is that, excluding the health one, there's only 3 of them, and you're introduced to all of them within the first like 3 or 4 levels of the game. And they never introduce any more of these throughout the rest of the game. They use these ones in very specific kind of interesting ways throughout the game, but these are the only ones that are there. It feels like they could be more, or they could have been spread out a little bit better, or so on, but they're fun, and I don't really have any complaints about how they work or how they're used. Just, I kind of wish there was more of them. I really enjoyed what I've played of Rodea so far. Like, yeah, I have some issues with the controls. It plays entirely with the Wii remote, which is mostly fine because you're flying around and pointing at things anyway, but anytime you're on the ground you have to use the D-pad to move around, which I don't hugely like with the Wii in general, but especially when you're holding the Wii remote in the kind of vertical orientation when you're using the pointer. The D-pad is just not, you know, comfortable to use in that kind of situation. They should just let you use the nunchuck. There's no good reason not to let you use the nunchuck. The nunchuck is included with every Wii. It was the standard way to handle movement. It's what it exists for. Yes, running around is not the main part of Rodea, but I mean, you do it sometimes. It would be nice to, you know, to have the option there. I also think that the flying can feel a little bit finicky at times. Rodea arcs in directions based on the way that you swing the remote when you're grabbing onto things, and sometimes it doesn't feel like he goes in the direction you expect him to. I don't know how much of that is me being bad at the game, which is definitely true, and how much of that is actually a degree of like imprecision or randomness with the way that it handles the arcs. But when it is all clicking together, you're chaining things together, it feels really satisfying to play. Like, I really like games like Gravity Rush, and when this game is at its best, it feels similar to that. Not in terms of like, you know, the actual mechanics, but just in terms of that feel of like having fun with the movement of a game. Also, it just kind of looks great. The obvious addendum being it looks great for a Wii game, but I mean, I think it holds up really well. It's got a bright, vibrant colour palette that's, you know, super saturated. It maybe overuses bloom a little bit, like a lot of games from this era did. The frame rate is locked at 60 FPS, which is incredibly impressive for a third-party Wii game this late in the Wii's life cycle. I mean, arguably 3 years after the Wii's life cycle, but you know what I mean. And honestly, I really just love the design of the levels and the world. I think they did a really good job of crafting a unique-looking world that is fun to explore and like to travel around and platform around. It's kind of a shame actually the game didn't release earlier in the Wii's lifespan, or indeed in the Wii's lifespan at all, because while I don't think Rodea would have been a smash hit, I do think it would have become something more of a cult classic the way a lot of smaller Wii games have. So what about the other versions? Well, interestingly, but maybe not surprisingly given the development history, the Wii U version is not really based on the Wii version, it's a port of the 3DS version. I don't have the 3DS version to test out, so I'm going to throw some B-roll that I have stolen off of YouTube here. I say stolen, I will be crediting all the people, there'll be links below. Please, don't put me in an H-Bomber Guy video. But from what I've seen, the 3DS version seems alright, graphically at least. Like, it seems like a decent port of the game. It looks fine for a 3DS game. They had to cut a lot of things back. It runs at 30 FPS, but like, it looks fine for a 3DS game. Not the best looking 3DS game I've seen, but you know, does also deviate quite a lot graphically from the Wii game. I do, however, have a copy of the Wii U version and have played it a decent amount, and it's interesting. Let's start with the graphical differences, because it's the easiest thing to just show and talk about, and there'll be some footage playing on screen just now, you know, you'll be able to see both versions if I've done this well, and the Wii U version looks terrible. I can't really overstate it. It looks really bad. And remember, this is a console that is the successor console to the one that the game was originally developed for. It's a more powerful console. It's, you know, it's the PS4, Xbox One era of console, and it looks like this. All of the colour and the charm of the world has been removed and replaced with a dull, desaturated colour palette. Even the environment detail seems to have taken a hit in quality, presumably because this is based on the 3DS port rather than the original game, but they didn't manage to do anything to like improve the fidelity of this game when they bumped it up to the Wii U. They've increased the resolution, it looks a bit crisper, it definitely looks higher resolution than the Wii version does, but that's kind of the only nice thing I can say about how this version of the game looks. Presumably to try and cover up some of these issues, they've also chosen to add a kind of like sketch filter over things. Sometimes it's not very visible, sometimes it's incredibly visible. And I usually don't mind these kind of filters. Like, I really love the Valkyria Chronicles games. They're some of my favourite games, and they use these kind of filters in a very, very stylistic and beautiful way. This game doesn't. It looks quite rough here. I don't think it fits the art style at all. I don't really know what they were going for. I kind of just feel like it was them going, we are using 3DS textures on an HD game, we need to do something to make it look like there's more going on. That's just my speculation, but that's what it looks like. It doesn't look good. Gameplay wise, the game gets a bit more interesting. You'll instantly be able to see there's some obvious things where like there's some extra UI elements and so on that were not in the Wii version. But also you'd kind of expect the changes to be kind of minimal, right? The whole point of the Wii game getting delayed was because they were waiting for the 3DS port, and the Wii U version is based on that 3DS port. So surely they're all just the same game. They're all in development at roughly the same time, sort of. Well, no. The Wii U version is actually a very different game, and presumably, again, I've not played the 3DS version, but I believe these changes are all there in the 3DS version as well. So let's get into what actually changed. Let's start with the controls, the obvious one. On the Wii, Rodea's movement was all handled by using the Wii's pointer controls to grab onto things and launch Rodea towards them. There's no pointer on the Wii U and the 3DS, so you have to adapt it in some way. And funnily enough, they kinda made it play similar to Gravity Rush. Now, I know that Gravity Rush has come up a couple of times in this video so far, and a lot of that is just because I really like Gravity Rush. I'm always thinking about Gravity Rush, it's always in my mind. But it genuinely feels like they took some elements of Gravity Rush for this, which timeline-wise kinda works out. Gravity Rush launched in 2012, 3 years before this version of the game came out, but obviously, you know, a year or so after the Wii version was complete. So it would somewhat line up that they might have taken some inspiration from it, but I mean, that's just a guess. There's nothing that actually says this would be the case. But instead of using a pointer to grab onto things and pull, you now have a mode that you enter after you jump called pre-flight mode, where you kind of float on the spot, and then it lets you more easily pick the direction you want to go in and grab onto things with an on-screen pointer that you use the analog stick to control rather than the IR on the Wii remote. It's a sensible change. I think it works fine. It slows things down a fair amount, and on top of that, they have actually slowed down the actual flight itself, which is a strange change. I'm not sure why they've done that. But then they've also added in a limiter for the length of time that you can fly. There's now a meter that goes down as you're flying, and when it runs out, you fall out of there. Again, kind of similar to Gravity Rush, but Gravity Rush is built around that mechanic, whereas they've kind of slapped it in here and it doesn't work at all, really. It doesn't fit the game, it doesn't fit the level design. It's strange. I'm not sure why it's there. These two changes, the speed and the meter that limits how much you can fly, honestly just makes the movement a lot worse to control. It just doesn't feel as snappy or as fluid when you're flying around anymore. It feels like a big downgrade from the Wii in terms of controls. It's just not very fun, unfortunately. If I had to speculate as to why they've done it, I kind of think that part of the reason is possibly just that this was a version that was originally made for the 3DS, and they might have struggled to get it running in a way that they could fly very quickly through a big open area the way that you do on the Wii. Maybe it just kind of struggled to render in stuff that quickly, and so they slowed down the flight to make it so that you could render stuff easily. All speculation. They might have just been like, hey, let's make the gameplay worse. I doubt that though. That's generally not how game development works. Generally there is like a logical reason for a thing, even if it's not a good change. The changes don't end at the controls though. Items are no longer the kind of arcadey style per level system, and instead you unlock them permanently. But the unlocks have also been spread further apart from each other. So that was kind of partially one of the things I said about the Wii version that they've kind of fixed here, except the levels are still mostly the levels from the Wii version, so now they've had to kind of cut big chunks out of each of the levels to account for the fact that you won't have certain items anymore because they're not unlocked until later in the game. It's a weird change, and it means the level design as a result is much worse because they've just taken big chunks out and mostly just replaced them with like cannons that fire you to the next part of the level. In terms of other things they've removed from levels, the Wii version has a bunch of like 2D bonus levels that are really fun, and they're just not in this version. I presume because they couldn't think of a good way to kind of like map the new control scheme onto them, whereas on the Wii they're controlled the same way as the main game is. You point at things and pull to kind of launch yourself across, and that wouldn't necessarily work as well with the analog stick controls. I'm not sure. There's got to be a way around it, but yeah, they've taken all these levels out, which is unfortunate because they're very good. Maybe the most egregious of all of them is they've shoehorned in a leveling system that feels incredibly out of place. You now collect mech pieces by destroying enemies, and you use them to upgrade Rodea's defense, strength, speed, and also to unlock new abilities and upgrade these abilities for each of the 3 weapon types or item types that we mentioned earlier. Interestingly, the speed upgrade increases your flying speed, the very complaint that I have about how this game controls. Although it does also explicitly mention in the tooltip for it, it does not increase the meter for how long you fly for. There just isn't a way to upgrade that. You're just stuck with that. It's just bad. All in all, the Wii U version of the game is just rough. I definitely don't recommend playing it, but I mean, the weird situation is if you're going to pick this up, you're going to end up picking up the Wii U version because that's the only place you can get the Wii version. So I guess it's worth like booting up to try it out and compare them, but I mean, it's not a fun version of the game. If you're going to play any of them, play the Wii version. The Wii version's actually very fun. It's not a perfect game. Like I said, the controls are kind of finicky. I think some of the level design in some of the areas gets frustrating in a very annoying way. It's part of the reason I've not finished it on stream yet. But I enjoy it enough that even just watching this footage again is making me actually want to go back and play it. Like, the core gameplay is fun enough that I am happy to recommend this as a thing that people should try out. There's not really anything else like it. It's just a really interesting take on a 3D platformer. So yeah, that's the kind of abbreviated story of Rodea the Sky Soldier. I hope you enjoyed this. Maybe I'll do another video on it later, a more kind of like full review or retrospective on the Wii version of the game once I've finished it. But for now, I hope you enjoyed this. If you did, let me know below in the comments, because I haven't been making a lot of videos and I would love feedback. And also, you know, if you like this, I'll make more stuff like this. See ya.